Good morning. This is the moderator. It is 9 a.m. It does appear we have all board members ready and present. So at this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Vice President Dr. Carrie Williams.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting. I would like to officially call our meeting to order.
This meeting is being recorded.
With a roll call. So I'm going to go down the panel, and if my fellow board members could please unmute themselves. So first I see Ms. Allison Lee.
Present.
Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Here.
Ms. Callie Pham.
Callie Pham, public member, present.
Ms. Christy Tran.
Christy Tran, present.
Sorry, Allison. Ms. Jackie Crabtree.
Good morning, Jackie Crabtree, industry member, present.
Mr. Steve Weeks.
Steve Weeks, public member, present.
And then Dr. Carrie Williams, industry member, and I'm present. And we officially have a quorum. I would like to again say good morning to everyone for today's meeting. And as far as my opening remarks today, I would just like to thank Ms. Christy Underwood, as well as the rest of our staff for all of their hard work that they've been doing during this time. I also would like to extend a huge thank you to Mr. Steve Weeks for attending the sunset hearing with Ms. Christy Underwood. And again, all of the hard work. I'm looking forward to continuing to work alongside my board members during this meeting. And I'm also very grateful that I was able to extend a little bit and continue to participate on the board as a member and continue to contribute to all the hard work that we are doing today. So thank you all to my board members for trusting me in this leadership position. And again, I'm so grateful to have worked alongside all of you for the years that I've been able to serve on the board. And I look forward to all the work, the good work that I know you all will continue to do. So the next item on the agenda will be the annual election of our officers for the state board. So are there any comments or does anyone would like to nominate someone into our president position?
I would like to nominate Steve Weeks.
I would like to second that nomination. And so now that there's a nomination on the floor, are there any comments? And Mr. Weeks, would you like to accept that nomination?
I would like to surprisingly accept that nomination because obviously I look forward to working with all the members of the board.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any additional comments?
I think Steve Weeks would be a great president.
I agree. Do I need to go to public comment?
Yeah, this is Sabina. Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, so after each motion in a second, if we don't have any more board discussion for any item today on the agenda, then we'll go to public comment and then we'll come back and take our vote.
Okay, awesome. So if any additional board members would not like, don't have any public comment, I'm sorry, don't have any comment, I now open it up to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and type, "I would like to make public comment." All comments will be addressed in the order they are received. You will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, we do have an individual identified as Fred Jones. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning, board members. Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California. Just had to make public my strong support of Steve Weeks' nomination for president. He has been an incredibly diligent non-industry public member, and we wholeheartedly support his nomination.
Our next public comment comes from Wendy Cochran. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning from San Diego, California. Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance, and on behalf of estheticians and cosmetologists practicing skincare across the state of California. We're so thankful that Christy and Steve did such a wonderful job, and I think this is a great nomination for us. Thank you, and congratulations.
With that, there are no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Okay, seeing that we have no more public comment at this time, I would like to take a vote. So I will one by one call out our board members, starting with Ms. Calumet Pham.
Yes.
Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Yes.
Ms. Christy Tran.
Yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree.
Yes.
Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. And then Mr. Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Okay, so it is official, Mr. Steve Weeks. Congratulations. You are our new board president. I'm super excited and I feel so confident in your leadership, and thank you so much for your service and look forward to your continued service as our new board president. So do I continue to do the elections for our vice president, Sabina?
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, we're now going to open up the floor for nominations for our vice president.
I would like to nominate Callie May.
And I would like a second. So we have a nomination and a second on the floor. Ms. Calumet, would you like to accept the nomination?
Well, this is a surprising turn of events, but I'm honored by the nomination and I will accept. Thank you so much.
Amazing. So at this time, I would like to open up the floor for any comment from our board members.
I think Callie May will do an excellent job.
I agree.
And I've served with her on DRC. She's been very active and very helpful from other perspectives to us in evaluating these cases. So I think she'll do a great job.
Is there any additional comment from our board members? Okay, seeing no additional comment from our board members, I would like to open it up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type, "I would like to make a comment." All comments will be addressed in the order they are received. And once again, you will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Actually, I see someone, Miss Wendy Cochran, just.
You are correct. It just snuck in. So with that, let me go ahead and Wendy Cochran, your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning again. Congratulations to Ms. Pham. I do want to point out that it would be interesting to have an industry member as part of the vice president, but I'm sure we will have some great interaction with Ms. Pham, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now at this time, we have not received any additional requests. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Okay, now that we have no additional public comment, I would like to go ahead and call a vote, starting with Mr. Andrew Drapkin,
Yes.
Ms. Calumet Pham,
Yes.
Ms. Christy Tran,
Yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree,
Yes.
Mr. Steve Weeks,
Yes.
and Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So congratulations to our new president, Mr. Steve Weeks, and vice president, Ms. Calumet Pham. I look forward to seeing your leadership here on the board. And again, it's been such a pleasure serving alongside the both of you. So at this time, we're going to progress through our agenda to our board member remarks. If any of the board members would like to make any remarks, you can at this time.
This is Steve Weeks speaking, and I wanted to thank you all for the nomination, and it will be a very interesting year. I want to especially thank Lisa and Dr. Carey for the strong, very strong leadership that they've shown over the past few years. They've been dedicated, they've been hardworking. I think you both trained me at my first DRC meeting, which was very intimidating too. And I think it lasted probably twice as long because you went into a lot of educational material too. And I thank you for doing that. But the strength of our whole board is that every one of us have been involved and committed, and it makes for a very strong board. Last year was obviously a tragedy for our licensees, and this year will be a recovery year. And it'll present all of us on the board with more challenges than probably we've seen in many years. But I'm absolutely certain that these are challenges that our board can meet.
I would just like to say, as far as being in the industry for so long, I am excited to work by both of your sides as well, helping in any way I can on any information, pertaining to the years that I have to share and what I've learned being on the board for the last 4 years. So I'm excited for you too. I think you're going to do a fantastic job. And it is going to be a tough year, but we can make it through it. We've done it, and I think we'll all work together fabulously.
I just want to thank the board for putting your trust in me and welcoming me onto this board and teaching me. And I want to thank Dr. Carrie Williams and Lisa Tong for your incredible example of leadership. And I look forward to following your example.
Amazing. Are there any other board members who would like to make a comment at this time?
Don't leave us, Dr. Carey. We love you.
I love you all too. Well, I'm still here as long as I still hold my position. I'm gonna be here. I love you all too. Thank you so much, Jackie. So I'm going to continue leading the meeting today. So if any other board members don't have any remarks, we're going to move into the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion and possible approval of our January 25th board meeting minutes. So has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I put a motion forward to approve.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. We have a motion on the floor that has been approved, that has been seconded. Is there any comment? I would like to open for public comment on our board meeting minutes.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. For your reference, being displayed on your screen are instructions to submit a request for public comment. You will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Okay, since we have no public comment, I would now like to call a vote. So I'm going to start with Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Andrew Drapkin, public member, aye.
Callie Pham,
Callie Mayfam, public member, yes.
Christy Tran,
Chrissy Trend, yes.
Jackie Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Mr. Steve Weeks,
Steve Weeks, yes.
and Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So the motion has passed, and now we will move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is the Executive Officer Report from Ms. Christy Underwood.
Everybody hear me? Thank you. Just wanted to make sure because in case you'd missed our sunset hearing, I had some technical difficulties and had to share a computer with Steve. So luckily we are both fully vaccinated and that went okay. And I'll take this time real quick to thank Steve for coming up and presenting with me at our sunset hearing. Long overdue, of course. As you all know, we were delayed a couple of years for our sunset hearing. And so I think that it went very well. Nothing that we didn't expect that came out of the sunset and the report that we'll talk about in a few agenda items. A few updates before we get into the statistics. As you probably know, we've had significant backlog of our exams because our exam sites were closed during the pandemic, and then we opened at half capacity and we were closed again. So, you know, they operate very similar to a salon. So our staff was not at work and we were not conducting exams for quite some time in the last year. But most schools were still operating. Schools transitioned to an online platform, and many our applications definitely went down, but they were still coming in. So I believe at our last meeting, we had about 7,500 applicants that were waiting to be tested. We now have at least scheduled all of those backlogged applicants. So everybody should have an exam date in their hand. Those dates are out fairly far. We're scheduled right now up until July. So what we are doing now is we now can open at full capacity. So we are starting to schedule people at our exam sites at our full capacity. And then we're also looking to backfill some of our scheduled dates that exist right now so that we can close that gap of people waiting to test. So again, everybody's received their exam date. Candidates are able to schedule their written test earlier so they can contact PSI, our exam vendor who handles that, and get into their written exam prior to their practical exam. And then again, like I said, we're working to shrink that time frame. So we have a pretty good plan in place. And hopefully it's going to take some time, but we definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. Another item I wanted to bring up is that there's a national committee that's been formed with the Council of State Governments to look at compact licensing for this industry. And I've been asked to be a part of that committee. So it's looking at compact licensing, in other words, like a driver's license. You can take your California driver's license and you can drive in Texas. So it's there are other industries that have compact licensing. I believe marriage family therapist is one of them, where if you're licensed in one state, you can come and work in our state. So this is something, it's a 2-year project just to do the review. But I wanted to let you know that myself, I've been asked to participate, as well as several executive officers throughout the country, and then also several licensees in the industry have also been asked to participate. So more information to come on that. The group is just being formed right now, but we do anticipate having a couple meetings this year to discuss that further. Let's see. I want to just take a minute also and congratulate Mr. Steve Weeks and Callie Mayfam as our new board leadership. I think that's a great. I love all my members, and I am a very lucky executive officer because it could go any way, and I would be happy. But I'm definitely happy to be working closely with the both of you as well. So that being said, we'll go ahead and take a look at the stats. Unless there's any questions that come up, you can see that we are moving right along. Our numbers are a little lower. We're seeing some lower passage rates right now. We are assuming that those are because we are testing people that have been out of school for some time. So hopefully, again, as we start to get people in quicker, we will start to see that improve. Any questions?
I have a quick question. Have you seen any indication from the schools that they've been participating to help bring students that have been out of school for some time more up to date and prepared for our testing?
Yes, we've had a lot of contact with schools over the last several months. Lots of discussions on testing, lots of reminders. We're actually doing a school outreach in May. We're doing an outreach with the instructors to kind of help them with the changes are coming in the exam and have a Q&A opportunity for them. Our exam manager, Melanie Allen, is going to be heading that up. So it'll be a great opportunity for instructors to connect directly with us.
So I just want to comment that I mean, to get all these people an exam date by July, I think is amazing. I know it may seem to folks like that's a long ways out. It really isn't. You're looking at putting, what'd you say, 7,500 people all with test dates within a 3-month period of time, I think is amazing, because hearing from the industry on my end is that we salon owners are having a hard time finding folks to hire. So this is going to be a really nice thing for the state to have more new talent out there to hire soon, which will be help with our recovery process. You know, just seeing in my own salons, the ebb and flow of guests coming in, and I know that's statewide, you know, so I hope with more people getting vaccinated, most of my team is vaccinated now. So it's makes it, you know, for a nice, safe environment for the guest and for the future service providers. And then also, that's really cool, the compact license program. I'm really excited to see how that unfolds and what takes place in that. That will also help in the transition from folks coming from state to state. So awesome job, Christy.
Thank you. And I have to say that our Deputy Executive Officer, Carrie Harris, it has not been easy getting these candidates scheduled. We don't have, while our systems work great for us, our data systems work great for us, and we haven't had any complaints until we had a situation like this. It is a very cumbersome manual process that our staff has had to go through, and mostly Ms. Harris was very involved in the development of the Breeze program for our board, and so thank goodness we have her, because it's taken hours and hours and hours of her time to run reports and data. So I just really want to thank her, as well as our licensing staff. They've really, it's been a hard couple months with the workload, because everything that we've had to do has been a manual process for us to get not where we want to be, but definitely better than where we were a few months ago.
Thank you, staff.
And then I also wanted to highlight that we did 2 new virtual events in April. We actually held a Vietnamese event and a Spanish event. So this was the first time we tried this. We did it an online kind of staying safe in the pandemic outreach event, and we targeted it towards Spanish speakers and Vietnamese speakers. We're fortunate that we have staff that are speaking both of those languages, so we were able to provide those outreach events in those languages. Not a huge turnout, but I think next time we do it, it will be better. We have some great partners in the Vietnamese community who have helped us, and I think who gave us some great advice on how to improve things in the future. But I think it's a big step forward in actually holding these events in those languages. And I think they're, with COVID has put us in a situation where we've had to use online services that we were not using in the past. And it's allowed us to do these types of events straight from our offices. And I think that the more we do them, the more people will get, and I think they'll be very successful. People seemed really appreciative that we were able to do this.
That's really, really great. I agree. I feel like we're able to reach more of our licensees, especially those communities. So I'm so happy to hear that those events went well, and I look forward to seeing more of them in the future as well.
That's the end of my report, unless anyone has any questions specifically to the data.
Christy, I have one quick question. The DRC counts, is the pending including people who have submitted written testimony and those who are choosing not to be heard?
Yes.
Is there a way going forward that you can maybe split that out so you know how many, what's the backlog for in-person versus what, actually hearing and taking care of it, so we know, we're not really falling behind, or falling behind because it's COVID and not because of inaction on our part, kind of a thing.
Yes, yes, we can do that. And also, I think we are looking to the future to start holding those in-person meetings again as soon as we can figure that out as well.
Do we have any additional questions from the board regarding Ms. Christy Underwood's report? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much, Christy. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our discussion and review and possible.
Sorry, Dr. Carey, want to do some public comment on that report?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Sorry.
Is there any public comment on our executive officer's report?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. You will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, we do have an individual identified as Wendy Cochran. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning again. I know this has taken tremendous amount of time and effort, and I really appreciate the testing stats from the board. I recently posted a query in my group of over 6,500 licensed estheticians in California and students. And the average waiting time for these people is 7 months. We are not the type of people that go to UCLA and sit in a theater and learn. We are the type of people that need to have our hands on things. I think that any industry member that sits on this board will understand that very well. The fear that these people are having about taking this test, of sitting around for an average of 7 months, sitting around for 7 months waiting to take this test, is incredible. And the bigger fear is that if they fail because they're so afraid when they take this test, that they'll have to wait another 7 months. I have never aligned with Daryl Issa ever in my lifetime, other than waving at him as I've driven by his office in my district. I believe that a temporary license or a suspension of the practical is a solution to making this happen. These people are failing because they don't have their hands on it. And as much as we say that we're reaching out to the schools, they're being abandoned. We even have people that have moved from other states and come into California that have 3 years of experience as an esthetician that are waiting for 8 months in order to test. And they've
15
already been
seconds.
licensed in their home state. So please consider dropping the practical. They've already taken their written. They should be ready to go and be employed in the industry. Thank you.
At this time, we have no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
So
I
now,
have a question real quick before we move forward. On the testing and the practical, in those numbers that are people are getting their tests now between now and July, does that include everybody in our industry, hair, nails, skin care, Christy?
It does. We do have people that pre-apply. So this is one of the manual processes that is very difficult and also difficult to explain. The pre-application process, somebody might have come in and said, for instance, a manicuring course is only 400 hours. So somebody could come in at less than that and pre-apply and say they're graduating in June. Well, we're already booked through. So if you looked at just pre-apps, we do it what's called an anticipated date. And those anticipated dates have booked up through the whole year, basically. So that's their anticipated date. That's one of the things we're doing right now is bringing those anticipated dates sooner. So they probably have an anticipated date, but the actual exam date is going to be sooner.
Thank you for clarifying.
do we have any additional questions or comments? Okay, seeing none now, we will move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the discussion and review and possible approval of the board's final responses to the Sunset Review background paper issues. So reviewing, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, did you want me to take that?
Yes, I was going to say reviewing the issues. I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Christy Underwood.
Okay, so this is our background report and issues from the Sunset Review Committee. So this, you will see, it starts with a lot of background, and then it lists, I believe, 18 issues that were put into this paper. Some of them are own, some of them are items that we've recommended. And so we've prepared the responses. And so, and I'm not sure you need me to go through each of the responses, but I'm available to answer any questions. And the board should discuss this, and hopefully we have to get an approval today. So any changes that we want to make to this, we'll just need to make sure we include that in the motion so that these can be submitted to the committees by the due date.
Thank you, Christy. So at this time, I would like to open up for discussion amongst our board members. So if anyone has any comments or questions, now is the time.
It's Steve Weeks. I have a couple of things. First of all, I want to also personally thank Christy and her staff for months of hard work in preparing for this review and bringing to the forefront issues and items that really should be looked at. It was interesting being in the hearing for the first time. We were questioned by both chairmen and about 3 other committee members, about 5 people, and were asked about a dozen questions that they wanted a lot of detail in during that hour-plus hearing. But they seem to have repeatedly focused on 2 areas. One, they began by bringing up the relationship between the cost of education compared to average earnings after education, the payback period. And obviously, we have no control as a board over what our schools charge for their education, nor do we have any control over what our licensees charge for their services. Those are both independently taken care of without board approval or in any way. They were quoting some areas saying that our people average make about $600 a week. I'm not sure on that study, but we also have to remember that 30% of our licensees self-identified as being part-time only. So it's probably skewed down some because of those part-timers involved. But I thought that that was really kind of a precursor and an introduction to other important areas that they wanted to get to. And I thought that was a precursor to the hours of training and examinations area, viewing it as a barrier to entry in our profession, or looking as a possible barrier of entry. The questions were asked is, are there too many hours of training and education mandated? And they said it, and we answered both, that it's all having to do with consumer protection and health and safety first that we base our answers on, and then move out from there. But they were very interested in that, and we should be prepared for some pushback in that area. They've talked about the possible elimination of the practical exam. I think what they wanted to see is some sort of tiering in our license, and the board last year, we already moved to this area by moving ahead and approving the hairdressing license. By that, gives us some tiering in our license, and will probably have effect on the number of hours of education and earnings beyond there, which could also help earnings, because it could be for existing licensees, the master licensees, if you want to call them that, of the barber or cosmetologist. They're going to be doing parts of other people's procedure that they wouldn't seen that person in the past. They could be bringing in new business for them too. So, like I say, it's going to be an interesting process that we go through. But I think we just have to really be very open in how we view things and open with our communication with them. And I think that this is a great start on our answers.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, in reviewing the report, again, I just thank Christy and the rest of the board staff for all of the hard work. I believe that all the responses were very detailed and thorough, especially when it comes to deregulating the license and really looking at our scope of practice, how important it is for us to make sure that we keep the act in place, but being open to the discussions, knowing that the industry is constantly evolving, but knowing that we must protect the health and safety of the public, and knowing how closely it is that we interact with them, and especially during this time of COVID, that's been heightened. We see how important that is. And I'm just glad that as a board, it's something that we've always kept at the forefront, something that we focus on with our health and safety. And so when it comes to our responses to the issues within the report, I was very excited and very confident about what it is that I've read. And so I look forward to continuing to observe and watch and support the board as we go through this process.
I second that, Dr. Carey.
Do we have any other discussion around our responses for our sunset review? Before we need to have a motion, correct? We need to approve this. So before we go into a motion, is there any additional questions or comments that any board members would like to make?
I'm just more curious, what's the argument that the legislature is making in trying to eliminate the practical exam?
I know that that's something that's not only being addressed with our board, that practical exams might not be as relevant as perhaps they were once thought. So I know that they have eliminated the practical exam for dental assistants, I believe. And so I believe this is just carrying on just the concern with practical exams in general.
I mean, are we going to get to the point where I just have to pass the written exam for my driver's license now? I mean,
I have a few questions. Regarding the recommendation from the legislature about considering whether to remove certain practices from the definition of barbering and cosmetology, I guess my question, I agree with the response, but my question what would it mean for our enforcement and our inspections? Because it seemed to me that walking into a salon and only certain, if there were a scenario where certain things would be under our purview and not, what kind of complications would that raise for enforcement?
It could, if this were to go through, I think the entire inspections program is going to need to be rethought. Because you're right, if for instance, if blow drying were no longer required a license, the inspectors would really have to determine who's doing what in an establishment, and sometimes that's very easy and sometimes that's very difficult. So it would definitely be a lot of change for our inspections program and how we figure that out and how we develop new procedures for what we do to inspect establishments to ensure consumer safety.
Okay, thank you. My second comment or question is regarding the recommendation that the board should be increased to represent kind of all of the categories of our licensees. I would be in favor of that. I think that more perspectives to draw from, it can only be a benefit. But I'm curious, if that were to happen, I wonder if you have any thoughts on what timeline that would look like, or would that be up to the appointing authorities?
It would depend on how the legislation is written. We are anticipating that SB 803, which will be our sunset bill, will be amended and language will be out possibly in the coming week. So it'll depend on how the implementation, if the language includes some type of implementation for maybe if when terms end or something like that, how we actually, and that covers all aspects of what might be in the bill. We'll need an implementation process on that. So normally it would be January 1 of next year if the governor were to sign the bill. It's ready to go January 1, but I'm thinking that there might be some implementation considerations put forth as well.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much, Christy. Do we have any additional questions or comments from our board members? Okay, seeing none, I would at this time like to open up for public comment. Oh, wait a minute, before I need to make a motion. So I would like to, I make a motion, I would like to move that we accept the board's and approve the board's final responses to the Sunset Review background paper issues.
I second that.
Okay, thank you so much, Jackie. So now we officially have a motion on the floor, and now I would like to open up to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower portion of your screen. Currently, for your reference, displayed are the instructions on how to request public comment. You will be provided the 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, we do have an individual identified as Wendy Corcoran. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi there, Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. I would caution members of using the term master when discussing this topic. Master indicates that we're going to school for, in my case as an esthetician, for an additional 600 hours, an additional test and licensure. Whether we're masters when we know our trade or, if we go to school for another 600 hours is another thing to discuss, but it is a hot topic in the industry. So if we say California, they discussed having a master's, that will raise some ears. And I believe that you think that we work for someone. Typically, an esthetician gets out of school, probably can't find a job, and immediately goes solo. That is not unusual. We are not being trained necessarily by somebody who has a decade or more experience prior to us coming into their work environment, because we are almost all, solo acts unless we're working for a larger corporation. And those don't tend to have masters working there. Masters in air quotes, of course. When you refer to a tiered licensure, that is not a tiered licensure that you're looking for, I don't believe. They are smaller in scope, but they would be independent licenses. So as in a hairstylist license, it would not include skin and nails. Something like a waxing license would only include waxing. So that wouldn't be necessarily a tier. A tier, again, is under that master's structure if you talk from a national perspective. And to the comment about driver's licenses and not having, having to go to the DMV and take a driver's license test in a car, we're really not doing a facial or doing actual waxing in the tests that we have for the practicals. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from an individual identified as Fred Jones. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Good morning again, Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation, California. It was an interesting hearing. I thought Mr. Weeks and Ms. Underwood did a great job representing the board. There is, I'm trying to be respectful, a high degree of ignorance about what our schooling is all about and what our industry is all about. This is a dexterity, hands-on industry. Led by right-brain artists and creatives. And if we were to cut back the hours in which students have the opportunity to work on patrons in the clinic floor, and if we were to get rid of the practical exam, you will have students fixated on computers and focused on the theory so that they could pass a truncated licensing exam that has no practical competencies whatsoever and is just basically memorization, regurgitation on a computer-based written exam. And that is a concern not only to instructors who all acknowledge this problem of fixation on theory and unable to motivate students to learn hands-on competencies and that muscle memory of repeat services to integrate the health and safety theory into the actual practice of barbering and cosmetology. But it's also a concern by our employers and salon owners, by the way, most of whom do not employ, but simply provide rented space and therefore cannot, by law, train those booth renters or suite renters. And so we will be shifting a lot of the burden to make sure students are safe and know how to competently practice their trade to salons that are ill-equipped to finish teaching them. Thank you.
With that, it does not appear we've received any additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Very welcome. Feature has been closed.
Okay, at this time, I would like to call a vote for the motion that we have on the floor. So I'm going to go through by roll call, and I'll start first with Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Andrew Drapkin, public member, yes.
Ms. Calumet Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Ms. Christy Tran,
Yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree,
Yes.
and Mr. Steve Weeks.
Yes.
And Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So the motion passes. And now we will move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 8, which is the update on our February 18th Apprenticeship Task Force meeting. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Christy Underwood.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation from our apprentice task force. This task force has met twice. You can see in your agenda items that it had quite a diverse attendance. We had brought in some experts from a lot of feedback. I'm not sure if you all are. Okay. We brought in program sponsors from the apprenticeship program, as well as a local law LEA. And I'm forgetting what LEA stands for right now, but I think it's down here in front of us. I apologize. And so it's a local education agency. Sorry about that. They have recommended the attached changes to the apprenticeship program. This is a pretty extensive regulation package. I want to make sure we all understand that this, if the board approves this package today, this is just the beginning. And it will likely see some more changes as it goes through the process. So again, there are very extensive changes that we are recommending to the regulations for the apprenticeship program that we believe will really strengthen the program and help these individuals that are going into that program be more successful. As we know that the apprentice programs have some of the lowest pass rates that we have seen. And so we're really hoping that this will help that. This will help with those of you that have served on DRC, which I think is all of you, will see that, you know, we find apprentices working home alone. I mean, not home alone, home alone in an establishment very often. So we're hoping that this increases our enforcement authority, increases awareness for the program. But again, these are extensive regulation packages. This is just the beginning. If the board should choose to approve this today, it will allow staff to start the regulatory process. So it requires us completing an initial statement of reasons, posting that information publicly, and then holding public hearings just for this language. So it'll then any language, any comments that comes back to us have to be presented to the board again. So just keeping in mind that this is a lengthy process for regulations. We've all seen how long the PSP has taken. So I don't think this would be that long, but it is the beginning of a lengthy process with lots of opportunities to make improvements in the language as we go through. So with that, as it is a recommendation, Sabina, is the motion the recommendation from the committee?
Actually, the motion, should the board approve this language, would be that long paragraph that you guys love to hear from me over and over again. So that would be authorizing the board to move forward with this as a regulatory package, and, you know, moving forward to the 45-day comment period and all that authority to make those documents that you just referenced.
Okay. So I would open this to any questions or comments from members at this time.
I have a question, Christy. In a prior board meeting, you made recommendations, and I think we acted on approving those recommendations, 48 or 50 different recommendations of changes to the apprenticeship program that you and your staff put together. How does that prior list of changes you had relate to what we're looking at right now? Did they go beyond that or less than that, or are there any significant differences?
It is not very significant. Most of those recommendations stayed through maybe some wordsmithing through some of the language, but for the most part, those original recommendations were accepted from the committee as well. We did have one discussion at the committee, and there wasn't a decision made. And if you look at page 9 of 19, the committee did not make a recommendation on if an apprentice may not hold ownership in the establishment where they are seeking approval. That was hard discussion for this task force, because there are owners of establishments who are not licensed, who can become an apprentice, and there's nothing in our regulations that say that that is not allowed. However, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, I believe, and I'm looking to Allison Lee to see if she might have any more comments on that as well, that at DAS, they did not feel an apprentice should also be the owner of the establishment, because they would be employing themselves, basically. And the apprenticeship is intended to be an employer-employee relationship. And so the DAS was concerned about that aspect, that they cannot employ themselves. But the committee couldn't make a decision on that. So that is one area we would probably need to address here with a motion, should the board choose to move these forward.
Christy, do we know how many on average that would affect, kind of a thing? Are we talking 5 people, or are we talking a large percentage of?
I do not know how many that would impact. I'm trying to think if we would have that data.
I sat on this committee, and the other folks on this committee, it was interesting, but they weren't in favor of what Christy's speaking about. I, as a board member, because what we see at DRC, I was like, oh no, we can't have people be an owner and an apprentice. So I recommend some change in that we have that more clear, personally, because as what we see at DRC, so many people, working without their supervisor, etc.
And we have it written to where the apprentice may not hold ownership in the establishment. That was staff's recommendation, because that's always what we've been told by the DAS. It's just that the committee did have some discussions on that. So I really just wanted to draw attention to the board that would be kind of the one area that the committee didn't make a decision on. That one highlighted line. I personally would recommend we keep how it is written. An apprentice should have an employer, and it shouldn't be themselves.
Agreed.
I would agree with you too. I think it's an obvious conflict of interest there, and it should probably remain in the way it is right now.
I agree as well. And I also just wanted to state, just knowing with experiencing different issues with the apprenticeship program through DRC over the years I've been on the board, I'm just excited to see that we have this regulatory package before us to be able to go in and make some changes.
I just have one kind of question, I guess, as a counter argument. I mean, I feel like we discussed this problem of establishment owners, claiming that they don't really have knowledge of the regulations. And would allowing an establishment, this is just a question I'm posing, would allowing an establishment owner to be an apprentice to, say, other, practitioners in their shop, encourage them to, get licensed and be more informed? Because I would imagine it would be difficult for an establishment owner to run an establishment and then also apprentice somewhere else. That's just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought of that as well, that they would own a salon at one location but have to train somewhere else. But they, a current process requires the establishment owner as well as the trainer to sign off on documents that are sent to the board, and they have to, it's a checklist in a sense, where they have to check off the requirements and what they're willing to, so they know what they are agreeing to do. And unfortunately, we still have significant issues in the apprenticeship program. And that's one of the things we wanted to address in the regulation packages, is really making it more user-friendly to read, for one, was one of our big goals. And when we make it more user-friendly, we can translate it to a more user-friendly language, and that's sometimes difficult for our regulations to be translated. So, we really called out the responsibilities of the owner and of the trainer so that we could hopefully increase that, because that's such a huge problem with the apprenticeship program right now. Owners are signing off with what they believe is their responsibility, but yet still leaving apprentices in their salons working alone. So, I mean, I see your point completely. And our recommendation is based on the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, just that in a traditional apprenticeship program, the owner shouldn't be also the employee.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments from the members of the board?
I just have a stupid quick question. So on this issue, if an owner, can an owner, for lack of a better term, put the establishment in a blind trust and then become an apprentice? Or are we saying if an owner wants to, a currently unlicensed owner, if they want to get a license, they must either get an apprenticeship at another location or go to school?
I believe they could, if they were a corporation, they could be, I would have to double check that. I'm looking to see if my staff is typing me a message right now to see if they have the answer on that. Just give me 1 second. I think we'd have to look into it, but I think that there might be an ownership, a way to set up the ownership.
What would be if my wife owns the establishment? Or if I put it in my wife's name during the time, is that going to be kosher, or because we know people will always try to game the system too?
I think that would be fine. It's not the same person. So, and same with a corporation. If you change the structure of your ownership, then you could be considered an apprentice. So it's in those occasions where it's a sole owner and that particular sole owner wants to also be an apprentice.
Which we said it could be 10%, it could be 3 people. We don't know.
Right.
Okay.
A blind trust wouldn't negate ownership, though. Even though it's a blind trust, there's a control issue there, but it wouldn't be, they would still have the ownership. So blind trust wouldn't work on this. But you're right, changing it from a husband to a wife, that may be a different situation.
Do we have any additional discussion or questions at this time? Okay, seeing none. Sabine, if you could please restate the motion for us, please.
Of course. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, bear with me. As you know, this is a paragraph. So your motion would be, I move that we approve the proposed text for a 45-day public comment period and delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed regulatory changes if there are no adverse comments received during the public comment period, to follow established procedures and processes in doing so, and also delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical and non-substantive changes that may be required in completing the rulemaking file.
Okay, so I move that we adopt the motion that was just stated by Sabina regarding the authority of the board to move forward with the regulatory package that is before us. Is that okay? Okay, great. So we have a motion on the floor. At this time, I would now like to open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. For your reference, being displayed on your screen are instructions to submit requests for public comment. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. We do have an individual identified as Jamie Schrabeck. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you for the pronunciation. This is Jamie Schrabeck of Precision Nails. And we haven't always been privy to the performance of the apprentice program in relation to the school programs. And I'm grateful that staff has included the executive officer's report, that information. But having that information and looking at it now, I'd like to ask this rhetorical question, knowing that the board cannot respond to my question. And that is, if the apprentice program represented one school and not all the apprenticeship programs across the state, what actions would the board take based on the really poor performance of students in that apprenticeship program? Thank you.
At this time, we have no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
So at this time, with our motion on the floor, I would like to call for a vote. And I will start with Mr. Steve Weeks.
Steve Weeks, yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Ms. Christy Tran.
Chrissy Trend, yes.
Ms. Calumet Pham.
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Andrew Drapkin, yes.
And Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So the motion passes. And now we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 9, the update on the Health and Safety Advisory Committee, and then discussion and possible action regarding some amendments. So at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Christy Underwood.
Thank you. So no amendments are being presented to the board today. We had put this on the agenda because we had a meeting just on April 19th, and we thought maybe there would be some recommendations, but not quite yet, possibly at our next board meeting. The Health and Safety Committee did meet on April 19th. We are currently reviewing the health and safety regulations. And again, this will be coming to the board as a very substantial regulation package. I can tell you that so far there's been enormous progress made in bringing the regulations current and more user-friendly. I think the board's going to be very pleased when they finally see this, but at this point today, we do not have a recommendation, and we hope to have that for you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next item on our agenda is item number 10, which is our legislative update. And so I will turn it back over to Ms. Christy Underwood.
So it looks like a lot, but it's not too bad, really. I'm going to, I'll give a brief review of each bill. I don't know that there's too many here that we will be asking for positions on because this is fairly early and I anticipate some changes happening on these bills soon. So we'll start with AB 29. This bill requires the entire packet of meeting materials to be sent to interested parties. This bill would be a cost impact by the to the board because of the substantial amount of materials that we sometimes have for these agenda items. We do put that information online and it's available to everyone to view or to print. I personally don't know that we need a position on this bill. I would recommend that the board just continue to watch, but I'm happy to open that for discussion if anybody has any questions on this bill.
Do any of the board members have any questions? Looks like we have none.
Would the board want to take a position on this bill, or you don't have to? We can just move on, and we will certainly keep tracking it.
I think I would like to recommend that we take your direction, which is just to watch it at this time.
I second that.
And I'm going to ask Sabina if we need a motion for that, or is that acceptable?
At this point, it's acceptable. If you're just going to follow staff's recommendations to not take any action today, and staff will continue to watch it actually without you guys telling them to really watch it. It's just something that's on our radar, especially as a department.
Great, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on. AB 54 actually has not moved out of its committee. I'm not sure that this bill is going to continue to move forward, but the bill was proposed to prohibit any Department of Consumer Affairs board from taking any action against an entity, an establishment or a licensee who had for violations during a pandemic. So I believe this would be a risk to consumers if a bill, and there's another similar one coming up. This board did take action on a few establishments that were egregiously violating the guidelines during COVID. Again, these were very egregious situations. And we have that authority because it is our responsibility to protect consumers. And these locations were putting consumers at risk. So I would recommend that the board take an opposed position on this bill. Even though I don't know that this bill is moving forward, I still think it is good practice that the board, if they so choose, make it known that it is our priority to protect those consumers, and we should have that authority to take action when it's needed.
I move we take an opposed position on this bill.
I second that. That's huge.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any additional questions or discussion around this particular bill, AB 54? Okay, seeing none, because we have an active motion on the floor, I would like to go ahead and open it up to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. For your reference, instructions are currently being displayed. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, it appears we have not received any requests. Would you like me to close this feature? I apologize. One did just pop up, an individual identified as Wendy Cochran. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. As a group of licensed estheticians and cosmetologists practicing skincare that was most affected by this, I will take a stand and say I support the board in opposing Assembly Bill 1554. As many of you know, we still didn't have estheticians working in Los Angeles County, which is over 20,000 licensees appropriately providing facial services until April of this year. That means they got an entire 3 weeks of income last year. We were the compliant ones that were trying to hold on the best we could, as much as we could. And it took us going to the news media to get our way through the Board of Supervisors and open back our aesthetic studios for facial services. So I appreciate the board taking a stance on opposing AB 54. Thank you.
At this time, we've received no additional requests. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
So at this time, I would like to call a vote for the motion that's on the floor, starting with Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Andrew Drapkin, yes.
Ms. Callie Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Ms. Christy Tran,
Chrissy Trans, yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Mr. Steve Weeks,
Steve Weeks, yes.
and Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to our next bill, which is AB 107. This bill is regarding licensure of veterans and military spouses. This bill would require a temporary license to be issued within 30 days of receiving documentation from a veteran or a military spouse. It also would require the board to develop regulations for this. And this obviously would impact our board. We do not issue temporary licenses at this point, so it would be an impact to the our systems, to our Breeze system to develop this. I would recommend that the board just watch this bill and we continue to see how it progresses through the process.
Christy, I'm just curious, what's the purpose of this?
There's the purpose is it's all about getting our veterans and spouses licensed as quickly as possible when they come into California. For instance, if someone is married to an active military person and they are stationed in California, it's to allow them to get to work as quickly as possible. We are ready Expedite military applicants, so military, spouse of military, they are required to be expedited, and we've been actually doing that for quite some time. So they are moved up to get, if an exam is needed, they're moved up to get an exam quicker, as well as if it's a reciprocity, those are processed very quickly as well.
What is the average time frame it takes right now?
Right now, right now we have our COVID situation still, so we do move them up in processing. If they are not in need of an exam, which they often are not, their processing time is usually within 2 to 3 weeks.
That's fast.
Did something come up to like force this issue to the top kind of a thing, or is this just somebody trying to make
we see these have been coming up pretty regularly for the entire department on a consistent basis. as well as on the national level. Anytime I'm in discussions with national organizations, they talk often about, or other executive officers, they talk a lot about how to get their military, active military and veterans into the workforce as quickly as possible.
I move we watch it.
I second that.
Yeah, I agree.
This is Sabina. Like I said earlier, the staff will, oh, sorry. The staff will continue to watch this regardless of a motion or not. And this is something that if something changes or it's amended or something else is brought to their attention, they'll definitely bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
We will go ahead and move on to the next bill, which is AB 225. This bill has actually been amended since we put out our agenda packet and has removed our board from any impact. So staff will continue to watch just in case something gets put back in, but at this time, AB 225 has no impact on our board. So we can skip that.
Christy, can I just ask a question? Since you mentioned it's been amended since this was published and sent out, how would that have affected the first bill that we are now watching, AB 29?
It just would depend on how they go through the process. It depends. Often if bills are similar, the authors will coordinate and join together in their bills, or they can sometimes go through the same process and one might get signed, one might not. So it would just depend. We would just continue to watch both of them.
No, I mean, would we have had to, if AB 29 came into effect, would we have had to reissue the board packets? Would we not been able to take a position because we had published something?
Oh,
time frame.
Right, because the bill was amended after 10 days of our meeting agenda, and we didn't have these bills. I believe were just amended on Friday, so it wouldn't have allowed us enough time to prepare information to give to the board or to the public.
So we wouldn't have, if we were to take this up, we wouldn't have been able to because we wouldn't have been noticed and been able to notice the public of it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And Christy,
All
this
right.
is Sabina. Sorry,
Yes.
this is Sabina again. And just for your information, also on AB 29, I have some of my other clients have asked for legislative materials to be exempted from that bill so that you could continue to discuss these items if it were amended during that time period.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, we're going to move on to AB 231. This bill, while it doesn't impact our board, it does obviously impact our industry. This is being proposed by Assemblymember Nguyen, and this is on, it goes back to AB 5, which had a sunset date, for lack of a better word, of the manicurist license in the worker classification. This bill, excuse me, so AB 5 had the manicurist exemption from the law ending on January 1, 2022, and this bill would remove that section and consider manicurist in the same light as the rest of our licenses. Any questions or discussion on this bill?
Has there been any talk of, if this bill does not go through, of extending the sunset date a year because of the loss of a year of COVID?
Not that I'm aware of.
I would move support on this, just to support our licensees. I think maybe the board should support this bill.
I second that.
So we currently have a motion on the floor. Are there any additional questions or discussion amongst our board members? Okay, seeing none, I would like to now open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have open for public comment. If you would like to submit public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. An individual identified as Fred Jones, your microphone has been unmuted.
Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California in support of Mr. Weeks's motion, in support of this bill to treat manicurists fairly and equally as hairstylists, barbers, and skincare professionals via the old bill, Assembly Bill 5, and allowing them to operate as independent contractors. Thank you.
An individual identified as Wendy Cochran, your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi there, Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. We support AB 231, and we hope that the board will as well. Going back to AB 107, I am somebody who is an Army officer's wife, Cal State Guard officer wife as well, and grew up at the back gate of Camp Pendleton. I support AB 107 personally, and probably the members of my group as well. If you are a specialist in anything, your average military family, I don't think any military sit on this board and understand this, moves every 2 to 3 years. If you're a specialist like a brig officer, I have one esthetician that's stuck up in this process between Quantico and in California because the brigs are here. She is stuck in both states without a license and does not know what to do other than work at a makeup counter. So I do support the passing of AB 107, temporary licenses for specialists that do have to move, like this family that has had to move 3 times in the last year in process, would make a difference. This is an experienced person, but she can't get a license here or there because of all the backups as well. Thank you.
Our next individual is identified as Jamie Schrabeck. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Jamie Schrabeck, Precision Nails. As a licensed manicurist and salon owner myself, I happen to have employees, but the entire industry deserves to be treated equally, and this is why I support AB 231 and Mr. Weeks, now President Weeks, motion to support this coming from the board. So thank you again.
At this time, we have no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Feature has been closed.
So we do have a motion on the floor. Are there any additional comments from our board members? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and start with our vote, and we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Steve Weeks.
And I vote yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree.
Yes.
Ms. Christy Tran.
Yes.
Ms. Calumet Ford.
Yes.
Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Yes.
And Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So our motion passes in support of AB 231.
To our next bill, which is sorry. Was there a comment there? Okay, sorry, I thought I heard something. Moving on to AB 339. This is another bill that was also just recently amended. It is a bill that regards to how we handle our open meetings, requiring in-person public comments, requiring the opportunity to comment on proposed legislation, and then also to provide interpretation services. I asked that the board watch this bill. Again, it was just amended, I believe, on Friday. So the information in your packets has changed a little, but again, it's regarding open meeting processes. It's a departmental-wide bill, and we will continue to watch this for the board. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next bill, which is AB 492, which is the extern bill for this industry, and this bill would increase the number of hours that an extern can be in an establishment. And you have your information in your packets. The board should take a motion on this bill. Just so the board is aware, this is the extern program is schools notify us that they are participating in the extern program, and the rest of that program is between the salons and the school. So the board does not track actual externs who are in the establishment. They only receive the agreement between that the school is wishing to participate in this program. So I open it to the board for discussion.
I kind of like it. I think that would be good experience for externs to have more time. Because right now it's what, 8 hours, 10%. What's the total hours they can do right now?
It is 8 hours right now. It's 10.
Well, it just says 8 hours per week, 10% of total clocked hours. So it'd be 25% of their hours now instead of 10%. I guess I should do some quick math here, huh?
I have a quick question regarding this program. So knowing that we don't have oversight of the students during an inspection, knowing that they don't officially have their license, how would the establishment or how would those students be inspected, or what would the impact be?
They are required to have identification that they are students.
Okay.
I can tell you it's not a very common program, so we do not come across it a lot. Okay. I would be cautious that increasing the amount of time that an unlicensed person is in a salon that the board is not tracking is a concern. That would be our perspective from the staff point.
What is the purpose given by the authors for this legislation? To give them more experience in the real world, or are externs allowed to be paid and therefore it's a financial thing? What's the rationale for the authors for making this change?
I believe that one of the issues behind this goes back to the common belief that there is barriers to entry to this industry, and that this is one way to get a student into the real life working environment and to get that experience. I do think you might receive more additional clarifying comments when you open it to public comment.
So how could we go about allowing more hours, but how could we regulate that? I get both sides of the coin, that, we'll have some unlicensed activity possibility, people taking advantage of it. I have had people come into my salons and do this in the past, and it's nice for them to get that experience. But I mean, I'll take lead with whatever. You obviously have more knowledge than me on what this could what problems it may cause.
I have some concern too. I would generally not oppose us looking harder into the externship program and the possible opportunities that it may present to us in multiple ways as a board. But I think this particular bill attacks it on a piecemeal basis. And I think we really need to go into it in more depth and come up with serious policies and not just a piecemeal attack. So I would oppose it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as a licensee, I understand the importance of our licensees getting some experience, but then and so much of the industry is shifting with COVID, because I'm thinking about the practical or the practice that students actually need the hands-on. So I think about the schools not, as we move forward, typically there is a salon where they can get experience. Of course, in the real world, it's a little different, but similar to some of the concerns that are being expressed, knowing that we can't regulate it and knowing that students are in these environments to make sure that they're still getting the same type of guidance and reinforcement of health and safety in the salon environments and the structure of these programs, because I know we have responsible salon owners, but then of course through our regulatory process in DRC, we know that there are some salon owners that are not as responsible. And my concern is that students who are still in school could possibly begin to pick up bad habits in a professional environment if those and the managers and the stylists in charge aren't reinforcing what they're learning. So I'm just thinking out loud to some of my concerns. Although I, again, like Jackie stated, as an industry member, I understand how important the exposure could be for a student. So
just another note, this bill does remove the word unpaid. So currently an extern cannot be paid. Of course, that is because anyone who receives compensation is required to be licensed.
Right.
So this changes that as well. And from a consumer protection standpoint, having people that are students, there are I've heard some great successes from externs, and I think there's definitely a role for externs in this industry. And perhaps even paid externs. I just am concerned that we lose who these people are, and I don't want to put the board in a situation where we walk into an establishment and people have an ID and say they're a student of a school, and that would be my concern with this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of my concern too, when I think about, again, like the infrastructure of it and knowing that we don't have oversight of the program.
I didn't read that clarification about the taking the paid part out, or I'm sorry, unpaid, so that the possibility that they could be paid. So with that knowledge, I suggest we oppose this bill.
There's a bill out there that could work for the externships that I think our board will probably be able to stand behind in some way. It's just not this particular bill.
I agree. Go ahead.
Carrie, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, it is nail salon owner. I think I recently heard that the student in beauty school now can have the externship in the nail salon. So I think I would support this bill because if they earn such the amount of hour in the school, so I think they would allow to go out and be in the salon to see the environment of the salon and how to interact with customer before they take the exam and ready to go out. So I make a motion to support this bill, AB 492.
So we currently have two motions on the floor. One motion is to oppose the bill by Ms. Jackie Crabtree, and one motion is to support the bill by Ms. Christy Tran. How should we proceed, Sabina? Is it based on which motion is seconded?
Yeah, well, we are lacking seconds currently, so we'll wait to see if we have a second for either of the motion, and then we'll move forward at that point, depending on what happens.
I would second the motion to oppose.
Okay. So the active motion on the floor currently is in opposition to the bill.
That's correct. Sorry, so we'll go ahead with that motion as it stands right now. I know we have dueling motions. We can also ask the second motion, the support, if they would like to withdraw the motion or amend it or maintain it on the floor for discussion later, and we can entertain a second at that point.
Okay. So, Ms. Christy Tran, would you like to withdraw your motion, amend it, or just leave it on the floor for discussion?
I would like to leave it on the floor for discussion.
Okay. So currently we have the seconded motion of opposing the bill. So at this time, is there any additional discussion or questions about the motion to oppose the bill from the board?
I have just a quick question. Is there any way to try to split the difference in say oppose unless amended and suggest amendments, or leave the amendments hanging, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You could say support, or you can oppose unless amended. You can support if amended. And then, depending on which one those are, then will change your, depending on what they do with the bill. You can also direct staff to see, depending on what the board would like to do, you can direct staff to try to contact the author's office to see about what kind of amendments would make you feel more comfortable and still protect our consumers. You have a lot of options on the table here.
All right, thank you so much. So is there any additional discussion about the current bill, then, knowing that we can still hold an opposed position less amended? Are there any specific things? I know I have a question when I think about, because I have concerns again about students entering into the workspace, but again, understanding the value that it can provide. Currently with the bill, it states that there at least have to be 25% of the hours. That's about 400, and that's still out of the 1,600 hours, correct? That a student would have to complete. So they have to at least complete 400 before they are eligible to participate in the extern program.
Yes, they have to complete a certain amount before they are eligible.
Okay. I just don't think I think 400 hours, in my opinion, is just not enough time. So with the current motion on the floor to oppose the bill, do we have any current discussion or questions still before I open up for public comment from the board members? Okay, seeing none at this time, I'll go ahead. Oh,
I do have one quick one. Is there an official, I guess, end date for an externship? I mean, if someone's at an extern, they complete their hours with their school, then let's just say they graduate, they fail the written exam, so they're not licensed. Can they continue an externship? Would we have any oversight of that?
No, they wouldn't be able to continue because you have to complete school in order to be admitted to the exam. So they would be out of school and would not qualify for the extern program.
And salons, therefore, would not continue to employ them as an extern.
They should not.
Should not.
okay. So
Can I just say one last thing? My main concern with this right now is I'm wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse. With Sunset, we don't know what changes are coming upon us. And if they, let's say, eliminate the practical exam, then we're sending somebody out into the real world, not able to test them. They're going to work. I just wonder if we should wait until certain other bigger shoes drop before we deal with some of and then we can reevaluate the workflow of a student, if you will, on what steps they can do to try to improve and deal with the issues of barriers to entry, et cetera, after we know what they're going to be going forward.
Yes, thank you so much for that comment, Andrew.
Dr. Carey, this is
Yes.
Sabina. I just wanted to interject here that this does not seem to apply to manicurists. So if that makes any difference for anybody, they are this would not apply to them.
Why do they keep leaving out our manicures?
So they don't know any better?
Or estheticians, I believe. This is externs are for cosmetology and barbering. Barbering is fairly new. That bill went into effect, and we're completing regulations on that now.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. So again, with the current motion that we have seconded on the floor, it's in opposition to this bill. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment, please click on the icon located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, we do have an individual identified as Fred Jones. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, members. Fred Jones, Professional Beauty Federation California, which is the sponsor of this bill. The bill passed unanimously from the Assembly Business and Professions Committee last week, which is chaired by Evan Lowe, who also co-chairs the Sunset Review Committee. With all due respect, it is not a piecemeal bill. It amends an existing law that was established in the mid-90s, incidentally sponsored by the chairman of my board of directors. The intent is, as Ms. Underwood stated, to address the barriers to entry concern that most of the members of the Sunset Review Committee expressed during Sunset Review hearing 2 weeks ago. We want to get students into a real world setting. We want to remove the prohibition against paying them. Doesn't require them to be paid, but it would allow salons to pay an extern, which will help minimize the debt and costs of their schooling. There is a lot of requirements built into existing law. 90% of the work they have to do has to be within the scope of their license. So they can't just be brushing hair and being a receptionist. They have to be insured by a salon. They have to have at least 4 licensees for every 1 extern. It has to be only employee-based salons, not booth rental-based. So there are a lot of requirements in the actual existing law that make this a solid program, but it also makes it very difficult for schools to participate because schools have to do a lot of oversight and keep records of the actual educational experience of each of their externs. So while this is not a panoply, silver bullet for everybody, this is a good law, and we just want to expand it so that more students can participate and be provided more opportunity.
Time had been reached. Our next individual is Wendy Cochran. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. We oppose Assembly Bill 492. First of all, it is only for cosmetology students. There's no real definition of what cosmetology means. So that leaves out electrology, as the board missed that one too. Electrology is aesthetics and manicuring, and we believe in equitable treatment of all license types. There is no board oversight, and for some reason, and I am a licensee, there is this weird thing in the industry where we are never paid for our services, often even as employees. We are convinced somehow that this industry is different and that it pays its people different. and we're supposed to be paid for the jobs that we do. There is no requirement that these externships be paid. So it's just going to be more exploitive free labor. And if it's supported by Evan Lowe, he also mentions that we only get paid $600 a week. So there's a real disconnect with what the real world thinks is going on behind salon doors. It's a lot of exploitation. This bill does not protect the licensees from that. And somehow we think that this is a different industry and they have different labor laws and different requirements of how you pay people for the work that they produce and the money and the profits that they make for these salons. Thank you.
At this time, we have no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Carrie, may I speak?
Oh, yes.
Christy, can you clarify this for me? Currently, I don't have any externship in my salon, but last year or year before last year, that's some beauty school owner approaching me and said that manicures can be externship. So he said that it would be legal and I would show all the document, any other paper that required to get externship. So he said that this is get approval from state board, and I wasn't with the board at that time, so I'm not sure. So correct me if I'm wrong, that I was stated earlier that allow the nail salon have externship. So could you clarify that with me?
Sure, it is it is specifically to cosmetology students as well as barbering students. No manicurist, manicuring, aesthetics, or electrology are not mentioned in the law to allow an extern for those license types. And again, it's a relationship between the school and the establishment. So that's a concern that if a school does think that there's that they can do that for a manicurist license.
Thank you, Christy, for clarifying this for me. So, well, I need to contact with that school and let them know that this is not legal for them to do it. So, but I still support AB 429 for the cosmetologist and barber.
Okay, thank you so much, Christy. Are there any additional questions or comments regarding the current motion on the floor, which is to oppose Bill AB 492 from our board members?
This is Sabina. I wanted to clarify what I said earlier about the order of the motions. I realized that the opposed motion came first, and then I finally drank enough coffee. The second motion of oppose is definitely put on the shelf for now until we finish the first motion. I wasn't sure if I was clear earlier, but obviously if the board takes a position, then we have to deal with the second motion when, and whether or not it ever even gets a second, because we obviously can't take two positions. But like was mentioned earlier, we could split the difference and talk about how we could possibly, support if amended or oppose unless amended.
Thank you, Sabina. So we do still have the current motion on the floor that's been seconded just to oppose the bill. I see no additional questions or comments from our board members at this time, so I want to go ahead and take a.
Actually, one quick question. Christy, do we know the public, namely Fred, I think mentioned that it passed out of committee. Do we know, does it need to go to appropriations and then to the floor, or do we know what the status is of the bill? Would we have another chance to take a position prior to any kind of vote, or do we not have another meeting scheduled before it leaves the assembly?
It should be going to appropriations. Our next board meeting is not scheduled until July. However, I tell you that I will be recommending a somewhat urgent meeting to take a position on SB 803, which will be our sunset bill, which language is not out yet on. So that will probably be soon. So there is definitely opportunity to take a different position.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you so much, Christy. So now I would like to, oh, was there?
I'm wondering whether to make a motion to put motion on the floor to watch, but trying to split the difference here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is Sabina. We have a motion and a second on the floor that we need to go ahead and finish up. And then if that doesn't carry, then, you know, the board, we can entertain all other motions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a vote for the current motion on the board, on the floor, which is just to oppose the bill. And I'll go ahead and start with the vote with Mr. Steve Weeks.
I vote to oppose.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree?
Yes.
Can I clarify that vote? Is that to oppose the motion or to oppose the bill?
I vote yes on the motion.
Thank you. I wasn't quite sure.
Ms. Christy Tran?
Chrissy said no.
Ms. Calame Pham?
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Mr. Steve Weeks?
Yeah, I vote for the motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
I was going to say, Steve gets 2. That's unfair. I am going to abstain.
Okay, well, Dr. Carrie Williams, I vote yes. So the motion carries with a majority vote.
That's correct.
So we're going to move on to the next bill.
Thank you. Our next bill is SB 102. Sorry, I jumped ahead. We are at SB 49. This bill did have some information that was impacting our board previously, and it no longer does. It's a tax bill. It's a bill that we will continue to watch to see if it changes that impacts our industry, but this is just an informational bill and we will continue to watch it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to SB 102. This is the bill that mirrors kind of the bill we discussed previously that we took an opposed position on, that would prevent a board from taking action on a licensee during an emergency order of the COVID-19 or any pandemic. Again, I would recommend an opposed position on this bill as for the reasons that I stated previously, that we have had some very egregious situations that we needed to take disciplinary action on to protect consumers.
I would like to move to oppose this bill.
I second. So we currently have a motion on the floor to oppose Bill SB 102. Any questions or discussion from our board members? Okay, seeing none, I would like to now open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. For your reference, displayed on your screen are instructions on how to submit a request for public comment. At this moment, we do have an individual identified as Wendy Cochran. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. We commend the board for opposing Senate Bill number 102. Licensed estheticians were very, very impacted by last year's events, both personally, financially, and other. And we really hung out as much as we possibly could to stay with the state order and respect the law, respect the state, and respect the regulations that we work under. So we oppose Senate Bill number 102. Thank you.
At this time, we have, I apologize, an individual identified as Fred Jones. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, Fred Jones, Professional Beauty Federation, California. The bill's not moving this year. It's a Republican author. It's not going to move at all next year. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to express the great frustration of the over 500,000 licensees and 50,000 licensed establishment owners in not one, not two, but three absolutely unjustified lockdowns of our industry. Save for the healthcare industry sector, we are among the safest sector of our economy. And the data that we have been able to squeeze out of various county health directors' offices prove that salons, barbershops, and skincare spas have been safe and not transmitters of COVID. And so we believe we were shut down unjustifiably without any supporting data or science. And in fact, the CDC endorsed the safety protocols of our salons and used them to buttress their own call for people to wear masks. So we can understand the author's intent and support that intent because our industry was devastated over the last 13 months, unjustifiably so. Thank you.
At this time, we have no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes.
Feature has been closed.
So we currently have a motion on the floor. Is there any additional questions or comment from our board members? Okay, seeing none at this time, I'll call for a vote, and I'll start with Ms. Jackie Crabtree.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Ms. Christy Tran,
Chrissy Tran, yes.
Ms. Calumet Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, yes.
Mr. Andrew Drapkin,
Andrew Drapkin, yes.
Mr. Steve Weeks,
Steve Weeks, yes.
and Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So the motion passes, and we are on to the next one.
Thank you. Our next bill is SB 772. This bill, I'm sure I'm at the right one. This bill requires that the adding of an administrative fine, it would prohibit the adding of an administrative fine to a minor violation. We do have some concerns about this bill because it does not clarify what a minor violation is. However, this is also something that kind of goes into our sunset review in looking at our administrative fine schedule. So at this point, I would recommend that the board watch this bill. I don't think that there needs to be any strong action at this time. We will continue to watch it, and we will have time to take a position at a next meeting. Do I have any questions?
Christy, do we know what the intent of the author is? Was it just like no fine if like a license is not displayed or something like that, or?
Correct. It's a department-wide bill, so it doesn't impact us only us, but it's definitely looking at those violations that are minor, that are not substantially related to consumer safety, and what the fine is connected to those types of violations. Hearing no other questions, I will move on to our next bill, which is SB 803. That will be our sunset bill. The language is minimal at this time. The language actually is language from us in our Sunset Report of 2018, where we stated that we would like the practice of medicine to also prohibit somebody from offering services that are considered practice of medicine as opposed to actually performing them. However, this bill is going to significantly change. I recommend that we watch it at this time. And once again, you will likely hear from us this week on setting up another meeting to discuss just legislation. As I do believe language is supposed to be in print sometime this week, and the board will then need to take a position on that sunset language. And that's it for legislation.
Thank you so much, Christy. So we're going to move on to the next item in our agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding the comments that we received during the 15-day public comment period regarding the rulemaking proposal to add Title 16 CCR. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Christy Underwood.
Thank you. So we're going to actually take, if the board is okay with this, we'll take number 12 first because it kind of leads into a better discussion to cover item number 11. So in section 12, which is our update on our regulations, we will talk first about our PSP permit. The PSP, we had some changes recommended to us by the Office of Administrative Law, which is why we needed to do a 15-day comment period. You can see that information in your agenda item under number 12. And so that was completed. We did receive one comment, which is what you provided under item number 11. And what we need the board to do at this point is we would need a motion for the board to direct staff to reject the comment and provide the responses to the comment as indicated in the meeting materials and complete this regulation process. Any questions?
No questions, but I would like to make the motion that was just stated by Ms. Christy Underwood around being able to respond to the comment that we received during the comment period as it's stated in our packets.
I will second that motion.
This is Sabina. Can I add a little bit to that motion, if that's okay?
Yes, please.
So you're going to direct staff to respond to that comment as provided in your meeting materials and move forward with finalizing the rulemaking process, and you're going to delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any non-substantive, non-technical changes to complete the rulemaking file.
Thank you. I adopt the language just stated by our legal counsel, Ms. Sabina Knight, into my motion.
I will resecond it.
Thank you, Andrew. So we have an active motion on the floor. Are there any questions or comments from our board? Okay, seeing none, at this time, I would like to open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment for your reference, being displayed on the screen are instructions for you to follow. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
So before I take a vote, I would like to ask again if any board members have any questions or comments about the motion on the floor. Okay, seeing that, I'm going to call for a vote starting with Mr. Andrew Drapkin.
Andrew Drapkin, yes.
Ms. Callie Pham.
Callie Pham, yes.
Ms. Jackie Crabtree.
Jackie Crabtree, yes.
Mr. Steve Weeks,
Steve Weeks, yes.
and Dr. Carrie Williams, yes. So the motion passes. And now we're going to move into our next agenda item, which is public comments on items that are not on the agenda. So at this time, I would like to open up for public comment.
This is the moderator. Are we going to be circling back to the agenda item that we skipped, or?
Oh, hold on.
We actually covered that in that last motion, moderator. Sorry, that was confusing. They did the 12 and 11 kind of together.
Gotcha.
Carrie, have you
Yes.
called me for a vote? I don't believe you have.
Oh, Christy, I did not. I am so sorry. Yes, Christy Tran for the vote for our last motion regarding the action on the 15-day public comment period.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Dr. Carey, if I could just jump in real quick, just on agenda item number 12 is also was just a brief update. No action needed on the rest of our regulatory packages. Our substantial relation criteria is with the Office of Administrative Law, and the remaining packages that are listed in your packet are currently under the internal review with either Consumer Affairs or our agency. And that's the end of that agenda item.
Thank you. I completely was so focused on the PSP. Missed that. Thank you so much, Christy. Are there any questions or comments regarding the other regulations that are in this particular update from our board members? Okay, seeing none, now we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 13.
We still need to vote? Did we still miss our vote on item 11?
No, I had to include Miss Christy Tran. I forgot to.
Oh, Christy, sorry.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that we recorded Miss Christy Tran's vote.
That's what, okay, I was missing Christy's vote and I wasn't sure that we had gone, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. I didn't know why I was still missing hers, but I'm caught up now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I know that last one because we jumped around. I want to make sure I covered all my ground, that we covered all of the regulations and we recorded everyone's vote. Now I would like to move on to agenda item number 13, which is regarding public comment on items that are not on the agenda. So I would like to open up for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a comment regarding this agenda item, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. All requests will be addressed in the order they are received. You will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes.
Feature has been closed.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we're going to move into the next item on the agenda, which are suggestions for future agenda items. So are there any suggestions from our board members?
Question, did we hire some more inspectors?
We did. We have quite a few new inspectors on staff right now. We have 4 up north, and we have actually 5 up north, starting at different times. And we have 2 down south who have been on with us for a little while. We do still have quite a few vacancies, but we're hoping to have those filled here. We'll at least have 2 filled in the next, probably in the next few weeks or month or so. It's a long process, but we do have a lot of new faces out there.
That's amazing. Love it. And with that, how many do we have after these 2? how many openings will we have left?
7.
Thank you for the update.
So are there any suggestions for future agenda items from our board members? I know we have our work cut out for us already. Okay, well, seeing none at this time, the final agenda item is adjournment. So I would like to officially adjourn our meeting. And I would like to extend my congratulations again to Mr. Steve Weeks and Ms. Calamay Pham. Looking forward to continuing to work with both of you while I still sit here on the board, and I look forward to seeing your leadership again. And thank you to all of the board members and the board member staff. I really enjoy seeing you all today. I know it's few far and in between and virtual, but I'm so glad that we were able to get through our meeting today, and I felt that it was very productive.
Bye, everybody.
Great job, Carrie.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams.